How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here. It's Monday, December 1st, 2025, at the time this video is dropping. But in case you guys did not check out our videos that drop each of the past couple days over the weekend, please make sure you do so after watching this one. I want to make sure you guys are caught up to all things in Mets land because a lot has been happening in a very short period of time at this point in the offseason. The stove is heating up that we all know. Winter meetings is right around the corner, so let's go ahead and break down today's topics, headlined by the fact that, yes, you know, Kyle Schwarber, that man who I've told you guys on the platform since the start of the offseason, will inevitably be a target for the New York Mets. So yes, you guessed it, the Mets are targeting Kyle Schwarber. We'll get into not only where that reporting initially stems from, but the likelihood, unlikelihood of the Mets landing Schwarber and how he compares and contrasts versus another big bopper that the Mets would love, and that is Pete Alonso. We'll talk about Alonso, the latest on his market right now, what teams are showing interest in him outside the New York Mets. From there, we'll also get into the Houston Astros potentially shopping a quality outfielder coming off of a tremendous breakout season that we saw this past year, and how the New York Mets are among teams that could find themselves in that market. That and a whole lot more in Mets land to break down on miscellaneous topics to get into, so sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride, which is our latest breakdown here on WardyNYM. All I ask is that you guys hit that like and subscribe button on your way in, and thank you so much for not only doing exactly that, but also for checking out our amazing sponsor at SeatGeek that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Simply utilize my promo code WARDY10, that is WARDY10, link down below in the description. That way you too get 10% off whatever you need in the ticketing space, whether that is NHL tickets, NBA tickets, NFL tickets, UFC events, boxing events, comedy shows, concerts, you name it. SeatGeek has you covered for all things ticketing. Use my promo code WARDY10, WARDY10, for 10% off. Link down below. Now, folks, before we get into all the meat and potatoes of what you want to know about today, let me first thank you for 36,000 subscribers. Very humble to be saying that, and I can't thank you guys enough for letting us hit that latest short-term goal. And because we had 36K, I promised you we're giving away another jersey on the platform. Every new 1K subs we hit, we give away a Mets jersey to one lucky subscriber. So next week, Monday, December 8th, in our live stream, because we'll be covering all aspects of MLB winter meetings that begin technically this Sunday, the 7th. We'll be live every single day, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. We'll probably be live a couple days before then. We'll be live after the fact. The stove is going to be unbelievably hot to the point that you can't even touch it without burning your hand. But as a thank you again for 36K, we're giving away a jersey to one lucky subscriber and that Monday evening live stream on December 8th. Make sure you guys chime in for it. If you don't, you're going to miss your chance. I do want to see all you guys get rightful opportunity to win that amazing jersey. And who knows, maybe that jersey will be a newly appointed player that the Mets say signed that same day or the day prior. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But all right, guys, let's get right into this one. We got a lot to talk about. So excited. Winter meetings is right around the corner. Hype me up, baby. Mets signed Juan Soto during that time last year. Let's see what they do this time around. But today, guys, let's begin with the following and Kyle Schwarber, because that's likely why you clicked on this video, and I don't blame you. If I was someone scrolling by and saw Schwarber on the thumbnail, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to see what's up with him in the Mets. And interestingly enough, this news broke from Jeff Passan of ESPN, but not on X, but rather Threads. Now, if you guys don't know, Threads is an alternate platform from X, basically the same thing for the most part. And Passan has a smaller following on there, only like 90,000 in comparison when he has million plus on X, and he has just casually dropped a lot of really important information regarding certain free agents right now as of last night. And I had a lot of followers of mine going out of their way to tag me in this right away and send me screenshots. So to everyone who goes out of their way to send me new Mets news every single day before I get a chance to look at it myself, thank you. You guys always make sure I'm in on the know with anything and everything every single day. You guys are amazing. But as we take a look at the Jeff Passan threads here, everybody, there's a lot of breakdown in this one. So we're going to break down it all, including the Kyle Schwarber comments, Pete Alonso, and much more. But let's go down and let's start here at the top, right? And this is, again, from Jeff Passan's official Threads account that you guys can check out. Only 200 likes on this. That's just crazy to me. He is such a smaller following here, obviously. Kyle Schwarber, the bellwether of the class. Schwarber's market is healthy. He's going to get years, and he's going to get average annual value. And at this point, he might be the likeliest of the big free agents to sign first. So much so that there's an expectation, according to John Morosi, that we saw of MLB, even though that he's just regurgitating what Passan is saying, that Schwarber's expected to sign before guys like Kyle Tucker in particular. Unclear if something gets done before the meetings, but I'd be surprised if they end and he doesn't have a team. The Phillies remain the favorite, with the Red Sox, the Reds, the New York Mets, and others also in the mix. So let's start there, everybody, and then we'll go on. So Kyle Schwarber, someone who we have talked about extensively here on the platform for a good stretch of time. Why? Because he's the most coveted bat in this year's free agent market, you could rightfully say, from a power front outside of the polar bear and Pete Alonso himself. And as you guys were seeing the highlights right here, and I'll show you them again, there's a lot to love about Kyle Schwarber when he's hitting bombs. And listen, I've despised this man each of the past number of seasons because he has simply tormented the Mets in more ways than one when he has been at his best, because he's been with the arch rival in the Philadelphia Phillies. Schwarber's coming off of a career season, and you have to bear in mind he was in a walk year. So it's not surprising that in his final year of a contract, he had the best season of his career. Don't expect that to be the same thing next year, regardless of where he lands. Not to say he'll be a bad pickup, but I'm just saying he's coming off of a career season. The likelihood of him doing that exact thing in 2026, the jury's still out, to say the least. 162 games, the only time he's ever done that in his career, mind you, to play a full season. 724 plate appearances, 111 runs scored, 56 home runs, 132 RBIs, 10 stolen bags, 240 average, 365 on base, 563 slug. Basically a 5-WAR season for a guy who's just a bat-first guy, has no defense to provide at all, over 50% above league average as a batter at a 152 WRC plus, which stands for weighted runs created plus, that you guys can see through Fangraphs, eerily similar to, say, OPS plus that you'll see there for Baseball Reference. So again, it's on a scale of 100. If you're above 100 as a batter, you're above league average. If you're below that line of 100, you're below league average. So 152, over 50% above. Really nice. Now, Schwarber, I don't really have to do much pitching as to why he would be a great pickup for this New York Mets team. But let's talk about all the pros and cons here for a second, okay? One, why would the New York Mets go out of their way to land Kyle Schwarber? Well, the realistic reality, that doesn't even make sense. The reality is that Kyle Schwarber would only sign with the New York Mets, with the Mets pretty much replacing Alonso with him. And I know fans don't want to hear that, but you'd be fooling yourself if you think that the Mets are a guarantee to land both Schwarber and Alonso this offseason. If it happens, I'll act like a kid in a candy shop. I'll apologize to each and every one of you. I'll tell you how much I'm not only ecstatic about this news, but how excited I really am looking into next season on what that duo could be like. But we're not talking about a duo here, okay? It's pretty much Kyle Schwarber or Pete Alonso for the Mets, and here's why. Schwarber, let's talk about the pros again. The pro is that this is a man who has been steadily hitting 40-plus home runs each the past number of seasons for the Philadelphia Phillies. Someone who would be a staple of a power lefty bat in this lineup that, yes, the Mets already have power from the left side, and guys like Soto and Lindor, when Lindor bats mainly from the left versus the right because he's a switch hitter and he has more left-handed matchups from a left-handed batter himself versus facing a right-handed pitcher. But the point stands, even after trading Brandon Nimmo, the Mets still have a fairly heavy lefty-heavy lineup. Now, adding Schwarber would only make that worse, but he's an exception because he's one of the best power hitters in the game right now. We've seen Schwarber step up time and time again. We have seen this man be a lock to give you at least 40 home runs, north of 100 RBIs every single season, and he's going to continue to age like a fine wine. There's no doubt in my mind, at least, because he's a DH through and through, and when you only have to be worried about hitting on a daily basis, and you're a savant the way that Kyle Schwarber is, this is a guy that's fully expected to age well as he gets into not only his mid-30s as he's entering his age 33 season, but even his late 30s. I'd expect Schwarber to hit bombs pretty much up until he retires. I mean, I'm pretty bullish on Schwarber aging well because as long as he's mainly in DH, it's really hard to envision him to not have continued success there, especially when all the focus is there. Not a guy you want in the corner outfield at all. That goes without saying. But Schwarber, there's a lot of pros with them, and it's backed by the power. It's backed by someone who's been in a lot of deep playoff runs over the past couple of years with the Phillies. It's backed by the fact that this man obviously knows winning during his time to a degree with the Chicago Cubs. So he has had all these tastes of varying successes, but this Phillies team has not gotten anywhere with their core. So is it really in the best interest for Philadelphia to run it back again with Schwarber and JT Realmuto without making some significant moves elsewhere? No, it's not. So while the Phillies may be deemed as a favorite right now, I think that there's still very much a possibility that he lands elsewhere. And that's where these other teams find themselves in the mix, including the New York Mets. Because the Boston Red Sox, I predicted in my WardyNYM YouTube video on top 10 free agent predictions, I think he will sign with the Red Sox with the assumption that Alonso returns to the Mets. Because this is what it comes down to, everybody. And this is where we get to the cons. Because of the fact that Schwarber is a standalone DH, he's not a guy that you would want to replace Alonso with that first base. If you think Alonso's bad defensively at first, just wait until you see Kyle Schwarber try to handle a full week's worth of first base play. It ain't going to happen. I'm telling you that right now. I'm also telling you that should the Mets bring back Pete Alonso, the polar bear, They would do that with the expectation that Alonso would get more reps at DH than he ever had before in his career. That is pretty much something the Mets are putting their foot down on, and it appears to be the case for other teams that are going after him as well. So what does that tell you? The reality is that in order to land Kyle Schwarber, it would have to be because that is the Mets' priority instead of Alonso, or the Mets view that Alonso's completely out of their asking price of not only AAV, but years. Maybe Alonso's really stubborn on 5-6 years, and the Mets don't want to go past 3 or 4, for whatever the case may be, and they pivot with Schwarber. Schwarber does appear like he's going to sign before Alonso, though. He's definitely going to sign before Tucker at this rate. So for the New York Mets, they have a decision to make rather soon, because if Schwarber signs before winter meetings or at latest winter meetings, Alonso's still on the market, and let's say hypothetically the Mets sign Schwarber, then the ship's kind of sailed for Alonso unless his market really shrinks. And we'll get into how his market may actually shrink again this offseason. As a surprise to some, including myself to varying degrees, Alonso's market might not be as good looking as what we initially thought. Now, that, of course, can change as the offseason goes on, as the Scott Boras Klein. But as we currently have these discussions, it doesn't look like it's the best for Alonso at this moment when looking at a wide variety of suitors, in the way that Kyle Schwarber, who's going to cost you less and will also cost you less years, is a guy that even on high AV, you go ahead and you don't even second guess it because you know you're getting one of the best DHs in all Major League Baseball. So for the Mets, if the priority is to maximize the DH position, to maximize the power implementation in that spot, something that the Mets simply have not done over the years since the DH became universal all those years ago, then Schwarber is the guy to get. It's as simple as that. And honestly, I would love it. Listen, I love Alonso to death. I don't want Alonso to go anywhere, and I hope that we could pair these guys together. But by adding Schwarber, it not only locks down DH, it locks down the lack of ability to have versatility in that position, the way that the Mets have tried to maximize over the years with the silly platoons of, oh, this guy bats so good against lefties, when in reality, he didn't transition well when he got to the Mets, or this guy bats so well against righties, and maybe he did in limited sample sizes, but how far is that going to get you? You know, the Mets platooned their DH this past season, including guys like Starling Marte, Jesse Winker, until he basically fell off a cliff before the season even began, sadly. But the point stands, Marte, as good as he was with the contact ability, still severely lacked the power. And I'm one of those baseball fans, if you're just asking for my personal opinion, I love power in the designated hitter position. I think every DH is not only a guy that should have power, but should be one of, if not the best power hitter in your entire lineup in that position. It just makes too much sense for it to be otherwise. I think of the Big Poppies. I think of the Nelson Cruzes. I think of, again, the top DHs that we've seen over the years before it became universal. We're talking more solely American League. Now that we have a universal, you see, again, the Dodgers get to maximize it with guys like Shohei Ohtani. I want that. I would love another big bopper batting from the left side in this lineup, and Kyle Schwarber checks off those boxes. But again, Schwarber at the cost of Alonso, that's where we have a healthy debate as to what is best for this organization. So, am I saying Schwarber's a lock to land with the Mets? No, not at all. But what I am saying is the Mets being in the mix is telling that they're currently weighing their options and basically figure out what should they prioritize more. And I have a feeling that if Schwarber is really going to come off this market in the next week, that they may still find themselves prioritizing Alonso over Schwarbombs. But to be determined on that front, because I would love that in Flushing, Queens. I know I'm not the only Mets fan to be saying that. Now, we talked about Kyle Schwarber. Let's talk a bit more, not just on him, but briefly, let's get into a bit more on Alonso. Because again, Alonso's coming off a very good season in his own right, a 3.6 WAR player. So just for context, everybody, Kyle Schwarber was roughly a 5 WAR player, far superior than Alonso this past season, when Alonso played the field a lot. And why did Alonso's WAR look not as good? Because of how poor he was defensively. If Alonso was a standalone DH this past season, I assure you, he'd probably be in right around the same value of a player as what Schwarber was, because Schwarber was a DH through and through, and he was tremendous when he was in that spot. 41% above league average. Nothing to scoff at in the case of Alonso. A lot to love about the Polar Bear coming off of a season with 38 home runs, 126 RBIs, a stolen bag. But in my opinion, this was the best overall season we've had with Alonso yet as a New York Met. I think that this was even more impressive to a degree than 2019, his rookie year, because no one knew him then. It was juice baseballs before we got to the dead in baseball in 2020, 2021 range. And he was tremendous in the first month and a half, 2 months this year. He's batting, north of 350, it felt. And then he was the most clutch hitter consistently throughout the course of this season for the Mets with runners in scoring position. Juan Soto took that crown once we got to August and onward for the remainder of the year. But steadily, throughout the entire course of the season, no one was more consistently clutch when you needed him to be in runner in scoring position scenarios than Pete Alonso. And Alonso has so much value to this Mets organization, not just for what he provides on the field, but obviously what he provides off the field. Not just great charity and community work, a homegrown talent that has reiterated how much he would love to stay here. Mets fans have made it abundantly clear how much we want Alonso to go absolutely nowhere but stay in Flushing, Queens. But again, this is a business, so that's why we're going to see this seesaw and back and forth in negotiation go on. And when we talk about negotiations, when we talk about the latest status of Alonso, let's go ahead and see what Mr. Jeff Passan had to say on his front. And he talked about Kyle Tucker here, as you guys can see as well. You know, at the end of the day, nobody can make a team better like Tucker, whether it's Toronto, Philadelphia, either of the New York teams, or perhaps one that misses out on the rest of the top players in the class. Price will be met. He'll get a 10-year deal at over $300 million. And I can tell you guys in confidence from everything that I've heard in the industry that, yeah, Tucker's asking price is going to get met, okay? To people that think that he won't get at least $300 million, I got a bridge to sell you. There are already teams that have contract offers over $300 million in for Kyle Tucker, and you will see that confirmed in the coming days, if not by winter meetings, I assure you. That is something that I am curious to see how quickly it's going to pick up once the ball really gets rolling for him in his market, if it hasn't already. But Cody Bellinger, we see comments about him. Nothing that we really need to get into that we don't already know. We know the Mets are among many teams in the market for Belly. I think Belly makes a lot of sense for this organization, but I don't know if the Mets are going to bend over backwards to sign Bellinger if a bidding war is going to continue the way that it appears at this point in time. We'll see. Now, Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso is what we're talking about. Both were free agents last winter, both produced well, both opted out of the deals that didn't reach expectations, and now both are faced with trying to get contracts that better align with their numbers. With a number of teams seeking a middle-of-the-order bat, the chances are good, though both are waiting for a team to step to the forefront. So what is happening, everybody? It's another year where the Scott Boras clients are going to be having their foot down until they get what they want, or at least until they give up trying to get what they want. Because that's what happened a year ago for Pete Alonso and the New York Mets. Let's not forget this. Alonso started last offseason asking for north of 7 years. Everyone laughed and said, yeah, okay, bud, we'll give you 3. Sure, maybe 4, but really it's 3. Maybe it's even 2 they initially offered. Who knows? Alonso saw a market that completely shrunk because he had the qualifying offer attached, which meant you had to give up a draft pick in compensation for him. Teams didn't want to do that. They didn't feel that he was enough of a needle mover to them. But that tells you a lot what you need to know about his evaluation a year ago. Fast forward a year later, no qualifying offer, coming off of, in my opinion, the best well-rounded season. Putting the defense aside, because that was not good for him this past year. Offensively, he was tremendous in a lot of ways. Now he does have plenty of suitors. He does have value. But how many suitors are really in this market for Alonso outside of the Boston Red Sox? And you'd have to think that this is contingent to a degree on the future of Kyle Schwarber. And I know Mets fans aren't going to want to hear this, but I need to be frank and saying. If Kyle Schwarber say sign with the New York Mets or sign with a rival club from the Philadelphia Phillies, do you really not think that the Phillies would put a heavy effort into trying to bring Alonso in and to have him platoon time at first base and DH with Bryce Harper? Because I think that would make a lot of sense. I think it almost makes too much sense, and I hope it doesn't happen. But the point stands, what happens with Schwarber will impact Alonso, for better or for worse, and vice versa. If something comes out of nowhere and Alonso signs, bam, just like that, either to return the Mets, to go to the Boston Red Sox, or to go elsewhere, that too will impact Schwarber's market, because these are two of the biggest bats when looking at power available right now. So one will inevitably have a trickle-down effect to another. We just don't exactly know to what degree yet. But what we do know is that, as you can see from Passan, though both are waiting for a team to step to the forefront, this reeks of another offseason where Alonso and Bregman are going to have their foot down until they get what they're looking for. And I don't know if anyone's going to reach Alonso what he wants. Alonso ain't getting 7 years. Maybe he gets 6, and there's really a bidding war that goes on with a 5-year contract with maybe a 6-year option. I think we're really pushing it when we get to that point, just because of the fact that we know that Boras has relayed Alonso's adamancy to have a greater appetite to play the DH position, because he's silly to not go out there publicly and state that, because it's only going to benefit his market by saying, hey, I know I'm not good at first base. I'll actually consider some reps at DH, okay? When I say not good at first base, before you guys get all upset with me, because you constantly do, even though it's a fact, look at all the numbers, look at the eye test, and get back to me. Yes, I know he saved a lot of plays because of his great scoops at first, because Mark Vientos is incompetent at the hot corner, his limited sample sizes here. The Mets up the middle infield was not good this past year between Lindor and McNeil. I get it. He lays out his body more than anyone else, and I love that Alonso does that to his best of his abilities. But as a true first baseman, Alonso severely lacks the defensive talent that you want if you're going to lock him down more long-term there. But here's the counter. If Alonso, say hypothetically, got 60% of the time at first base and 40% of the time at DH, and the Mets had a strong, defensively minded backup first base option for them that maybe could play various positions, cough, cough, Cody Bellinger, then it makes a lot of sense to bring Alonso back. The same way that it makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams to consider the Polar Bear then, because he's making sure that he can be available to the best of his abilities. Because Alonso is a bat-first player. He's never going to be known for his glove. He'll always be known for the bat the way that Schwarber is. Embody that. Let that define you, because that is who you are as a player, and that's not only how you're going to maximize your return of a contract, but it's also how you're going to maximize your career. Let's call it how it is. Is Alonso going to just start to become a Gold Glover next season? Maybe he'll prove us all wrong, but until we see it, it's nonsense to even consider such a thing. So for Alonso, as someone who I severely hope does return to this Mets team, I want him to return. I don't want him to go anywhere else. The fact of the matter is that as much as we want Alonso to return, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what is happening with him and his market and what he's shaping right now. But what we do see is that Alonso's market doesn't appear to be as maybe groundbreakingly big as maybe some thought initially heading into the offseason. Some people thought that Alonso's market would be completely night and day from a year ago. I myself found myself in that category to a degree, but we're a week away from winter meetings right now. A lot of dominoes are still on the board. Very few have fallen since free agency really began. But the point stands. How many suitors does Alonso really have? And on top of it, is Alonso going to get a contract beyond, say, 4 years this offseason? Solid chance he doesn't. And that's where the Mets find themselves in supreme position. The Mets strike me again as a team that wants Alonso back, doesn't want to go beyond a certain amount of year commitment with them. And I think that has not only to do with the fact of his lack of defense at first, but also them wanting to have a level of flexibility in DH down the road where they don't want long-term commitment there, which I can respect, even though Alonso, in my opinion, could be one of the best DH profiles in baseball. I think he can be right up there with Schwarber, if not better, because Alonso's amazing as a power hitter. We know this. And the idea of him being solely in that position to bat, not focus on defense anymore, he's never really done that in his career. So there are some negatives that could come with it, but the positive is that he may lock down the strike zone better than he ever has before as a batter. And that became apparent because he DH'd more. By all means, let's continue to roll it with our home run cane. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure how to feel. But I definitely want to hear from you guys regarding Alonso and his uncertain market at this point in time. And secondly, just to talk briefly, if Alex Bregman is someone that actually would have an appetite again for a short-term high AAV contract similar to the $40 million AAV over a couple years with the Boston Red Sox, would you, as a Mets fan, have the appetite for the Mets to do such a thing, which would mean the inevitable trade of Brett Beatty? Is that something you'd be for or against? I definitely want to know your thoughts, because for me, a lot of these guys I think would be great fits for the Mets. Not many of them do I love investing long-term on, but when it comes to short-term high AAV, maybe after, say, markets fall and Bregman doesn't find what he's looking for and or Alonso doesn't find what he's looking for, this is where the Mets and Steve Cohen can really flex their financial guns and strength, which is short-term high AAV. So we'll see what happens on the Alonso front, but I'm very, very curious to see how things play out over this next week leading into winter meetings. And again, guys, if you want to check out all the other key things that Passan had to say on Threads, please make sure you do so. There's nothing really else that's too notable regarding the Mets other than the fact that he mentioned how whether it's the New York Mets or the Orioles, Valdez is that kind of starter that's going to help you right away and be your opening day starter while also being the guy that who's going to be starting playoffs for you right away. And the final thing I'll say on the front of Framber Valdez is someone who sees plenty pros and some cons with him. Not at all opposed to Valdez at the right price, and as long as the Mets make sure that that doesn't pigeonhole them from making other proper moves potentially to the rotation. Definitely the best surefire guarantee in what you're getting this year's free agent class, no doubt about it, when looking at starting pitching with ace caliber upside. Look no further than the southpaw and Framber. Beyond that, though, we see Bo Bichette's stuff, nothing to really talk about there at the moment. We see Munetaka Murakami's market is already starting to heat up, and he could find himself signing relatively soon. We know that Kazuma Akamoto has until January 4th to sign. We know Tatsuya Imai's market is really starting to pick up, and I love me some Imai. You guys know I like Imai a lot. He's my favorite pitcher available in this free agent class. Honestly, he's right up there. If not my favorite, then like 1A and 1B with one other guy, because a lot of upside with him. I broken down extensively what you need to know about Imai, but let the numbers do the talking if I'm not going to rehash that for each and every one of you right now. A lot to like about him, and there's an expectation that he could actually sign right as we get to winter meetings in Orlando this Sunday. So a lot of dominoes are going to be coming off the board soon, folks. And when we evaluate the trade market too, you see, talking about, how Skubal being dealt is exceedingly unlikely, as much as that bothers me to hear, because it shouldn't be that way, but it appears to be that way at this point in time. He talks about guys like Peralta, Green, Buxton, Quan, who probably won't be traded, but still could be. They will be traded in Marte, Cattell, that is, Jaron Duran, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez. I will gladly take one of them, thank you. And those starters, if not both. And where are they going to go? Brendan Donovan, Luis Robert, Jeff McNeil, Nolan Arenado. So he's already penciling in that McNeil's like a lock to be dealt, like I've been saying for months on end. And you shouldn't feel any differently now, especially after the stuff that we saw come out with the Post, even though that's more of a nothing burger in my opinion, but the point stands. Jeff will not be a New York Met next season. One final thing I want to say on the front of threads from Jeff Passan in this one before we get on to our other topics today. And that is the following. Passan, back around Thanksgiving, actually did an open Q&A on threads with a bunch of baseball fans. And one fan in particular asked him his thoughts on the Mets trading for both and or one of Freddie Peralta, Joe Ryan. And in reply to that, Passan said either would make a lot of sense. So right in the wheelhouse of what we have expected. The Mets are looking for frontline starters, not only in the free agent market, but the trade market. And should they say trade Kodai Senga that we broke down in yesterday's video, how he's playing to stay in the organization, the counter to why you should trade him here is because of the fact that if you do that, you open up these roster spots. And the Mets could get guys with better ceilings and better floors. And that is obviously what Stearns is in the market of right now, and trying to maximize Senga's value while he still has some in a market where it's very expensive to land a pitcher, even a pitcher that is coming off of what was a Jekyll and Hyde 2025 season in the case of Kodai Senga. But again, guys, check out the rest of his stuff on threads should you have interest to do so. I'm curious to see what happens with Michael Cain. He did say here that he thinks he's going to land on a 3-year, $75 million contract. That's literally verbatim what I said on the platform over this past week. I think he's fully destined to get a Shamanaya type contract, and that is why Michael Cain may very well be the starter of the Mets land in the free agent market, because that is right in their wheelhouse, a price point, not too much long-term commitment, someone with ace caliber upside, but also a guy that, at his worst could be your number 4 and say your rotation if things really don't go right. So we'll talk more about them once we get more news, but now let's go ahead and break down our next topic today, everybody. And let's start here with a miscellaneous one briefly. You guys see it right there. Steve Cohen and Hard Rock were awarded a downstate New York casino license. $8 billion Metropolitan Park project adjacent to Citi Field projected for June 2030 opening. It's officially happening, everybody. No matter how much you're excited about it or how much you hate the idea of it, it is inevitably happening. Steve Cohen got the approval for his casino. It took a fee of $500 million, but that's pocket change for a man with a net worth of over $20 billion. And now he will be getting that casino right across from Citi Field, and the Mets are going to be building this Metropolitan Park that's going to have a lot of different fun things about it that fans are going to like. Now, naturally, there's going to be pros and cons that come with this. It's going to be far more hectic to try to get in and out. They're going to be building these massive, if I'm not mistaken, parking garages for fans. But for someone like me who's from out of state, I'll just probably be crashing at a buddy's house that's not far and then taking the trade in, because if you thought it was a cluster at Citi Field with parking before, just think how much more of a cluster it's going to be should they have massive parking garages after trying to exit a bad 10-9 loss in extra innings. It ain't going to be fun. So I'm not looking forward to that aspect of it, but I am looking forward to quite literally every other aspect of it. And as he goes on to break down Michael Mazzeo here, he does state the following. The specs for Metropolitan Park, 50 acres of Citi Field parking lots will include a Hard Rock hotel with a casino, sportsbook, restaurants, bars, a over 5,000 seat music venue, and a Taste of Queens food hall. That I'm excited for. That Taste of Queens food hall, as a foodie myself, I'm going to be all over that. I'm going to be having so much fun when that happens. It will also create 25 acres of public green space, 23,000 union jobs, $1 billion in community benefits, and infrastructure improvements, including a revamped ADA accessible 7-line train station. We also see, assuming everything is finalized, Cohen Mets will have to go through a formal process with MLB on the sportsbooks portion, as the Cubs did with their Wrigley Field, DraftKings Sportsbook, and others have. So again, we still have a lot more work to do, but now we have the timeline. June 2030 is when we should expect all this to be done and us to be seeing what life is like at Citi Field now, with a vastly different environment, night and day. And what I'm looking forward to that most is just the community more than anything. The community kind of dies outside the parking lots when you're going to a Mets game, because Who wants to just be at the little chop shops around you? You know, no one wants to deal with these garages of the cars being worked on that take them 10 years to do, obviously, because a lot of them were fronts for various different reasons I won't go on the tangent on. But the point stands. Now that you're actually going to have a lot of different things around Citi Field, this is what's going to build community. And this is what's going to build not just constantly having a high volume of fans at the games, but this is what's going to allow fans to, instead of saying, oh yeah, I'm just going to go in for the day trip the way like myself would, who's a Pennsylvania resident, for example, to be more inclined to stay for the weekend. Maybe I'll stay at the Hard Rock Hotel, or maybe I'll stay at a buddy's, but I'll be able to hang in that sector, that area, for the entirety of time that I'm there over a weekend or maybe a week span. So I'm looking forward to it. I know that, again, there's a lot of pros and cons that come with this depending on who you talk to, especially for those who live in the respective area. I can't share my opinion on that as someone who's not actively in that area, but for those that are not looking forward to it, I apologize. I just hope that everything works out to the best of its abilities in the end. But now, let's go on from that little miscellaneous topic. Let's get into this from Ken Rosenthal that he broke down earlier today. Came out with his latest piece in The Athletic. And in this piece of The Athletic, it did go on to break down how, yes, the Astros outfielder and Jake Myers is drawing trade interest. And this is fascinating to me. And the reason why it's fascinating is because I was unaware as to how good of a season Myers had last season until pretty much now. So I'm actually really happy to be breaking him down because, guys, I'm telling you right now, the Mets need a stopgap option in center field for Carson Bench. Jake Myers, if it ain't Luis Robert, Jake Myers is already one of my favorite picks, okay? You guys see the stats down below, but let's get into why he makes sense, okay? Few quality center fielders, and this is all from the article, and I quote, are available in either free agency or trade, triggering interest in players who might be pried loose from other clubs. The Astros' Jake Myers, coming off a modest offensive breakout this last season, is one such player. MLB Trade Rumors projects Myers to earn right around $3.5 million in the first of his 2 remaining years of club control. Pardon me, everybody. The Astros are open to moving him for a controllable major league starter, according to people briefed on their discussions. And the interest in Myers entering his age 30 campaign is considerable, other clubs say. The Phillies, the Mets, the Rays, among other teams that are exploring upgrades in center field, obviously can find themselves in this market. The Orioles, the Diamondbacks, Kansas City Royals, etc. There's a lot of teams that obviously can be looking for outfield help. But the Mets are one of the most notorious ones this offseason. They were the notorious one before they traded Brandon Nimmo. Now they really are after trading Brandon Nimmo. But let's get into ultimately why Jake Myers, in my opinion at least, would be a really nice pickup for the Mets for their center field. And it starts with the defense, guys. I mean, the home runs that you see beside me are fun and all, but that's not what you should expect in Jake Myers. He's coming off of a season where in 100-plus games, just under 400 play appearances, 53 runs scored, 3 home runs, 24 RBIs, 16 stolen bags, 292 average, 354 on base, 373 slug. Good for a 2.3 WAR season and 7% above league average. In simple terms, Jake Myers is everything that Tyrone Taylor isn't with his offensive approach that we saw this past year. And really, since Tyrone became a New York Met, he hasn't had any significant stretches of brilliance offensively. The way that Myers was steadily a really good high contact and solid on base bat that we saw for the Astros this past season. He blossomed because previously, Myers was a guy that was sitting more in the 220 to 240 category in batting average. And while I personally don't think that batting average is the end-all be-all, in the case of what Myers' role would be for the New York Mets as a stopgap center field option, someone who could play all aspects of the outfield proficiently, as he's one of the better outfielders in all of baseball defensively, he makes a lot of sense to me. So now you say to yourself, okay, Jake Myers as a stopgap option until Carson Bench is ready, and then he's someone you can balance either late game situations, you can have him platoon in certain situations, and obviously it would also increase the likelihood of Tyrone Taylor not needing to be needed for this organization. Nothing personal against Tyrone, but I want the better players on my team. And Tyrone Taylor is not as good as Jake Myers, so let's not say that he is. What Tyrone Taylor is, however, is a far superior defender with his arm. And that is the only qualm that I have with going after Jake Myers. Because Jake, and you guys will see it right here, when we take a look at his baseball savant numbers, again, a lot to like, some not loving, but for the most part, not the end of the world. Give me 1 second, everybody. Sorry, folks. I've had an on-off cough for the past couple weeks, and I get this tickle in my throat every couple minutes of me talking. I got to go ahead and cough up a lung every 2 seconds, so that's why I muted the mic. But 89th percentile in fielding run value, 43rd in base running, 40th in batting run value, 79th in expected ERA, right around expected batting average rather, XWOBA right around league average, below league average in slugging, exit velo. Yeah, again, he's not a guy that's known for the power, so I'm not worried about that. Scored up percentage, well above league average, right around 70th plus percentile. Chase percentage, 79th. Whip percentage, 71st. K percent, 72nd. Really good command of the strike zone. And walk percentage, right around league average at 48th. Now, range, which is outs above average, and that's what grades his defense, 95th. For context, the best in baseball would be 100. So he's elite in that category. But where he's not elite is his arm strength. Again, very good speed on the base pass, 71st percentile. But when we compare and contrast someone like Jake Meyers with Tyrone Taylor, and these are Taylor's numbers from this past season for context, elite base runner, elite fielder, terrible bat. I mean, a bat that was DFA worthy for a good stretch of time. But this is why Tyrone Taylor is so valuable. Not only is he still a very good defender, even though he's not as good as Jake Meyers with his overall defensive range, his arm value is in the 98th percentile, and his arm strength is 82nd. So Tyrone, a guy who could comfortably get some big throws in from center, Meyers strikes me as one who's going to have a bit more of a noodle arm, kind of like how Brandon Nimmo had when he was in center for the Mets. And I'm not too concerned by that, as long as Meyers is a stopgap option and basically replaces Tyrone Taylor's role on the roster. Now, you may say to yourself, Wardy, why would you replace Tyrone Taylor when Meyers hasn't done enough throughout his career to maybe justify replacing one with the other right now? And that's a fair argument. I'm not saying you're entirely wrong, but when we look at ceiling, when we look at upside, it's night and day between the two. Meyers clearly is the one coming off of, again, almost batting 300 in over 100 games this past season. How could you not be intrigued by that? Because if you're going to have a lack of power in one position and your outfield, you want to be center with a guy who's a supreme defender. While in the corners, you have Soto and hopefully one of Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker, whoever it may be. Byron Buxton, if you guys love some, people made out of glass but are awesome when they're healthy. Point is that Meyers has plenty upside, but I can completely understand fans that say, okay, the Astros want a pitcher for him. What kind of pitcher would the Mets have to give up? Is it even worthy of having the discussion? My answer to that is, the Mets do have pitching that they could part with. And is there a world where they could trade Kodai Senga to the Houston Astros in turn for Jake Meyers and more? It's possible. And truthfully, I wouldn't hate that idea. Because if you added a player with a couple years left of control, Jake Meyers is like what Jake Marisnick was to Brody Van Wagenen when Brody signed him all those years ago from Houston. Remember Jake Marisnick, our fourth outfielder, that really wasn't all that good? Meyers is definitely a step ahead of him, no doubt about it. But the point stands. If you land a controllable outfielder who has a couple years of control, making pennies, mind you, who's a supreme defender, even though he lacks the arm strength, but can give you great range and help back up guys like Soto and whoever's in left field, then I don't think that's a terrible thing, because you just have to make sure you maximize Senga's trade value. And I can't tell you in confidence what exactly his trade value is right now. All I can tell you is that he's still valuable. There's 8+ teams in his market. He can veto trades to 10 teams. So there are 10 teams that he can say, no, thank you very much. While others, he'll be like, I have no say and I can't really dictate this. It is what it is. So point is that if Senga got traded in this deal, I would be for it, but you'd have to get more than Meyers back, because Senga has far more of a track record to prove that even with his lack of health this past couple of years, that you need more than someone just like Meyers. But again, if you got creative, added Meyers, maybe added a quality reliever that had some control with him, and now we're talking. Now we're actually getting somewhere when it comes to a trade that makes sense. And before you say, Wardy, why trade Kodai Senga? I've went over all the reasons. Watch yesterday's video, for example. But two, and most importantly, you do that again to open up more rotation room for guys with better floors and obviously greater, if not equal, ceilings. And that's what the Mets would do. There's absolutely a world where the Mets could trade Kodai Senga, get valuable pieces back from the Astros, and then sign Framber Valdez, which would kind of be funny considering Senga would be trying to lead the way in Houston. Valdez would be trying to lead the way for the New York Mets. It would kind of be a swap without it technically being one. So that's just something I'm pondering as we're talking right now as I'm making this video for you guys. But I definitely would love to hear from you all. One, was your appetite for someone like Jake Meyers? Again, as a stopgap option. I'm not at all in for Jake Meyers for the purpose of blocking Benj, where Benj wouldn't play the next couple of years because Meyers would be here. No. I view Meyers as a guy who would be our starting center fielder to begin this season unless Carson Benj really breaks the team out of camp. And if he did, it's okay. You can still utilize Meyers in various situations throughout the outfield, late game replacement, pinch runner for you, pinch hitter for you, high contact pinch hitter, mind you, and some of that, again, just can be utilized in a creative way by Carlos Mendoza and this Mets staff. Whereas he would replace a Tyrone Taylor who has a much lower floor and his ceiling is not going to touch what Jake Meyers just did this past season. So definitely let me know all your thoughts on the front of Meyers, guys, if you're for him as a stopgap option for this outfield that has obviously limited value, but still value that I don't think is the worst idea in the world. Do you think the Mets should go crazy after a center fielder that's far superior to anyone we're talking about right now? You're like, you know what? Love Carson Benj, but let's go get a certainty. If you're in that category, that's fine. I'm in the category of I want Carson Benj to be given the opportunity to succeed next year. I know David Stearns is going to set him up for that to happen. And I also know that the Mets are clearly going to be adding at least one outfielder this offseason, whether he's more of a stopgap option or more of a certainty for the corners with a great bat, like a Tucker, like a Bellinger, etc., that could really get this team rolling for 2026. But Mets fans, again, thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below from everything that we had to break down today. And be on the lookout in case I have a new video dropping either later today or a live stream. Because like I said, it's that time of the year. News is constantly coming out. It's constantly happening. I want to make sure I cover it for you all to the best of my abilities. Thank you again. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out, everybody.